I stood in the middle of my empty restaurant at 9:47 p.m., surrounded by untouched champagne flutes and a 5-course tasting menu that nobody came to taste. The grand opening of Sorella, my dream restaurant in Charleston, South Carolina, the culmination of 15 years of culinary training, blood, sweat, and every dollar I'd ever saved. Empty. Because my family, my business partners, the people who'd promised to be there, had simply not shown up. My phone buzzed. A text from my older brother, Julian. Sorry we couldn't make it. Something came up. We'll catch the next one. There wouldn't be a next one. You only get one grand opening. One chance to launch your dream into the world and hope it takes flight. And they'd missed it. Deliberately. Because 3 hours earlier, while I was plating amuse-bouches and checking table settings, they'd been across town in a conference room with Maxwell Hospitality Group, one of the largest restaurant acquisition companies in the Southeast, discussing how to sell my restaurant out from under me. I didn't know that yet. Not standing there at 9:47 p.m. with my sous chef, Marcus Chin, awkwardly trying to comfort me while our servers stood around wondering if they should leave. But I'd find out. Oh, I'd find out exactly what they'd done. And when I did, they'd discover that the chef they'd underestimated for 15 years had been preparing for this betrayal for the last 3. My name is Isabella Santos, and if you're staying with me, you're about to watch how the little sister they dismissed as a dreamer turned their attempted theft into the biggest mistake of their lives. I wasn't supposed to be a chef. I was supposed to be a doctor, or a lawyer, or anything that fit the script my family had written for the Santos children. My father, Roberto Santos, had built a successful construction business in Charleston. My mother, Carmen, had been a real estate agent for 30 years. They were practical people. Numbers people. People who valued stability over passion, security over dreams. My 3 older siblings had followed the script perfectly. Julian became a commercial real estate developer. My sister, Gabriella, married a hedge fund manager and produced 2 perfect grandchildren. My youngest brother, Diego, went into finance. All of them stable, successful, respectable. All of them making the kind of money that impressed at dinner parties. And then there was me. Isabella. The youngest. The one who dropped out of pre-med at 20 to attend culinary school. The one who'd wasted a full scholarship to Duke to go to the Culinary Institute in New York. The one who'd spent her 20s working 80-hour weeks in restaurant kitchens for poverty wages while her siblings climbed corporate ladders. They'd never understood it. Why would you choose to be a cook? My mother would ask, emphasizing cook like it was something shameful. Not chef. Cook. Like I was flipping burgers at a fast food chain instead of training under James Beard Award winners. When are you going to get a real job? My father would say every Christmas, every birthday, every family gathering. You're too smart for this, Isabella. You're wasting your potential. But I wasn't wasting anything. I was building. Learning. Training under the best chefs in New York, then Paris, then Bangkok. Stages at Michelin-starred restaurants. Competitions where I placed in the top 3. Features in Food and Wine, Bon Appetit, Charleston magazines, 30 under 30 in food. I was becoming someone in my industry. Someone respected. Someone whose name meant something. Just not to them. To them, I was still the flighty youngest child who'd thrown away her future for a pipe dream. When I told them I was opening my own restaurant 3 years ago, they'd been skeptical but cautiously supportive. As long as you're not asking us for money, my father had said. I wasn't. I'd saved every penny from my years as a sous chef at 2 different restaurants. I'd won a cooking competition with a $50,000 prize. I'd gotten a small business loan. I'd crowdfunded from the culinary community. I'd made it happen without them. But then Julian had gotten involved. Let me look at your business plan, he'd said over dinner one night. I know commercial real estate, I know restaurants as investments. Maybe I can help. I should have known better. But he was my brother. And some stupid, hopeful part of me thought maybe this time, maybe finally, my family would see what I was building and be proud. So I shared everything. My financials, my investor documents, my lease agreement, my recipes, my vendor contracts, my vision for Sorella. This is actually really solid, he'd said after reviewing everything. Isabella, I'm impressed. You've thought this through. Tell you what, let me bring in Diego and Gabriella's husband, Marcus. We could form an LLC, provide some additional capital, help you scale faster. You'd still be majority owner, still have creative control, but you'd have family backing you. What do you think? I'd thought it sounded too good to be true. I'd been right. We formed Santos Hospitality LLC. I held 51% ownership. Julian, Diego, and Marcus Whitfield, Gabriella's husband, each held 16.33%. They'd invested $200,000 combined. I'd put in $300,000 of my own money, plus sweat equity. The agreement was clear, I had creative and operational control. They were silent partners. Investors. Nothing more. For the first year, everything went smoothly. They'd shown up to construction meetings, tasted menu items, posted about Sorella on social media. Supportive. Engaged. Proud, even. Or so I thought. But over the last 6 months, things had shifted. Julian started asking pointed questions about profit margins, about scalability, about whether my farm-to-table concept was financially sustainable. Diego wanted to know if I'd considered bringing in a consultant to optimize operations. Marcus kept sending me articles about restaurant chains and asking if I'd thought about franchising. I dismissed it as typical business-minded thinking. They saw food as an investment. I saw it as art. We had different perspectives. That was fine. I was the majority owner. I made the decisions. What I didn't know was that they'd been having separate meetings. Planning. Strategizing. Building a case for why Sorella needed professional management, and why I, despite being an award-winning chef, despite having built this entire concept from scratch, despite owning 51% of the company, wasn't capable of running my own restaurant. They'd planned this. The missing grand opening wasn't carelessness or bad timing. It was strategic. They'd wanted me to fail publicly. To open to an empty room. To feel humiliated and defeated. Because a defeated chef would be easier to convince. A humiliated owner would be more likely to sell. They'd orchestrated my failure so they could swoop in with a rescue offer that was actually theft dressed up as a business opportunity. I sat at that bar for another hour, just thinking. Processing. And then I did something they never would have expected. I smiled. Because what my family didn't know, what they'd never bothered to learn because they'd dismissed me as naive and impractical, was that I'd been preparing for exactly this scenario for 2 years. When Julian first suggested forming an LLC, I'd hired an attorney. Not just any attorney, but Simone Rousseau, one of the best business litigation lawyers in Charleston. She'd reviewed every document before I signed. And she'd added provisions. Protections. Clauses that Julian and Diego and Marcus had barely glanced at because they were too busy underestimating me. The LLC agreement included a drag-along provision that worked both ways. If majority ownership wanted to sell, minority owners had to agree. But it also included a poison pill clause that I'd insisted on. Any attempt by minority owners to sell or transfer their shares without majority owner approval would trigger an automatic buyout option at book value, not market value. Saturday morning, I woke up on the couch in my office at the restaurant. My phone had 63 notifications. Text messages from Julian, Diego, and Marcus. All versions of the same thing. Can we meet? Need to discuss something important. Great opportunity for Sorella. I ignored all of them. Instead, I called my sous chef, Marcus Chen, and my front-of-house manager, Aria Williams. I'd hired both of them 6 months ago, and they'd become more than employees. They'd become my team. My allies. People who understood my vision and shared it. Emergency meeting, I said. My place, noon. I'll explain everything. They showed up at 11:45 a.m., both looking worried. I laid it all out. The missed opening, the Maxwell email, my family's betrayal, the legal strategy. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then Marcus said, "So we're about to kick out your entire family and take full control of this restaurant?" "That's the plan." Arya started laughing. Actual, genuine laughter. Oh my God. They have no idea what's about to hit them, do they? None. Good, she said fiercely. Because watching them not show up last night while you stood there waiting? That was the cruelest thing I've ever seen. They deserve whatever's coming. We need to keep this quiet until Monday, I said. Simone's filing the injunction first thing. But in the meantime, we need to prepare for relaunch. Because once I own this place outright, we're doing the grand opening again. For real this time. And we're going to make it spectacular. We spent the rest of the weekend planning. New guest list. New date, December 10th, 3 weeks out. Enough time to build buzz, to get critics and food media excited, to make it the event it should have been. This time, I wasn't inviting my family. I was inviting the people who'd actually supported me. The culinary community. The local farmers who'd partnered with me. The staff who'd believed in this vision. The real family I'd built in Charleston's food world. Sunday afternoon, Julian showed up at the restaurant unannounced. I was in the kitchen testing a new dessert when Arya came back looking uncomfortable. "Your brother's here. Says he needs to talk to you. Tell him I'm busy." I did. He says he's not leaving until you talk to him. I wiped my hands, untied my apron, and walked out to the dining room. Julian was standing by the bar, looking at his phone, completely comfortable in the space he was trying to steal from me. "Isabella, there you are. Listen, we need to talk about the Maxwell offer. It's actually really generous, and..." "No." He blinked. "No? You haven't even heard the full details." "I don't need to hear the details, Julian. I'm not selling. Sorella isn't for sale. Come on, be reasonable. This is a $1.2 million offer. That's significant money. And you'd still be involved, you'd get to keep cooking, you'd just have professional management handling the business side. The business side I've been handling perfectly fine on my own. Isabella, you open to an empty restaurant. That's not perfectly fine. That's a disaster. Look, I know you're upset about last night, but this is business. We have to make smart decisions, not emotional ones." "You're right," I said calmly. "This is business. So let me be clear, I'm not selling. I'm buying you out." His face changed. "What?" "You, Diego, and Marcus. I'm exercising my buyout option under the LLC agreement. You'll be notified officially on Monday, but I thought I'd give you a heads up since you're here. You'll get back exactly what you invested. $200,000 total. Not a penny more. And then you're out. All of you. You can't do that. Read the operating agreement, Julian. Section 7.3. Any minority owner who attempts to sell or transfer shares without majority owner approval triggers an automatic buyout at book value. You met with Maxwell without me. You tried to sell my restaurant without my permission. You violated the agreement. And now you're out." I watched realization dawn on his face. Then anger. "You planned this. You put that clause in there deliberately." I protected myself. There's a difference. And honestly, Julian, you should have read what you were signing. But you didn't. Because you underestimated me. You thought I was some naive chef who wouldn't understand business. You forgot that I've been running kitchens since I was 22. Managing staff, controlling costs, negotiating with suppliers, handling crises. You think that's not business? You think I don't understand numbers because I also understand how to cure a duck confit? Dad's going to hear about this. I'm sure he will. And when he does, tell him I said that the daughter he dismissed as impractical just outmaneuvered 3 businessmen with decades of experience between them. Tell him that a cook he was embarrassed by is about to own one of the most talked about restaurants in Charleston. And tell him that I did it without his help, without his approval, and despite his certainty that I'd fail. Julian's face was red now, that same shade of fury I'd seen on my father countless times. You're making a mistake. You need us. No, Julian. You needed me. You needed my concept, my recipes, my reputation, my connections in the culinary world. Without me, Sorella is just an empty room with expensive furniture. With me, it's a destination. And you just lost access to that because you couldn't resist trying to cut me out of my own dream. We were trying to help you. We were giving you an exit strategy, a way to cash out, to finally make real money instead of. Instead of what? Instead of doing what I love? Instead of building something meaningful? Instead of creating art that feeds people, that brings them joy, that makes them feel something? Julian, you've never understood me. None of you have. And I'm done trying to make you understand. Now get out of my restaurant. You're trespassing. He left. Slammed the door so hard the windows rattled. And I stood there in my empty dining room, surrounded by my vision, my concept, my dream, and I felt powerful. Not angry. Not vindictive. Just absolutely, completely powerful. Because I'd just told my family exactly what they'd never believed I could be, someone they couldn't control, couldn't manipulate, couldn't use. Monday morning at 9 a.m., Simone filed 3 documents simultaneously. An emergency injunction preventing any sale or transfer of Santos Hospitality LLC shares. A formal notice of buyout exercising my rights under Section 7.3 of the operating agreement. And a cease and desist letter to Maxwell Hospitality Group informing them that any discussions about acquiring Sorella without majority owner approval were void and that continued contact would result in a tortious interference lawsuit. By 9:15 a.m., my phone was exploding. Calls from Julian, Diego, Marcus, my mother, even my father who I hadn't spoken to in 6 months. I silenced all of them. Let them panic. Let them scramble. Let them feel what I'd felt standing in an empty restaurant on what should have been the proudest night of my life. At 10 a.m., I got a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Isabella Santos? This is Jennifer Hoffman from Maxwell Hospitality. I just received a very aggressive letter from your attorney. I'm calling to clarify what I think might be a misunderstanding. There's no misunderstanding, Miss Hoffman. You met with my business partners without my knowledge or consent. Those partners do not have authority to sell or negotiate on behalf of Sorella. I'm the majority owner. I make those decisions. And I'm not selling. I apologize if we overstepped. Your partners represented themselves as having authority to explore acquisition options. We acted in good faith based on their representations. Then your due diligence was inadequate. A simple review of the LLC documents would have shown you that I control all major decisions. But that's not my problem. My problem is that you're still calling me. Don't call again. Any future contact goes through my attorney. I hung up. And I felt incredible. Because this was power. Not the kind of power my family valued, built on money and status and playing by their rules. But real power. The power that comes from knowing exactly who you are, what you're worth, and refusing to accept anything less. My family had tried to steal my dream. Instead, they just handed me complete control of it. And now I was going to show them exactly what that dream could become when it wasn't held back by people who'd never believed in it in the first place. The injunction hearing was scheduled for Wednesday morning. 2 days of radio silence from my family, followed by an explosion of legal activity. They'd hired Patterson and Cole, one of the big corporate firms in Charleston, to represent all 3 of them. The firm that probably charged more per hour than most of my line cooks made in a day. Simone texted me Tuesday night, they're bringing Daniel Patterson himself. Senior partner. They're taking this seriously. Good. Let them waste their money. I met Simone at the courthouse at 8:30 a.m. She was wearing a sharp navy suit and carrying a leather briefcase that looked like it had seen 1,000 courtroom battles. I'd dressed carefully too, professional but authentic. Black blazer over a simple white shirt, dark jeans, my hair pulled back. I looked like exactly what I was, a chef who understood business, not a businesswoman trying to play chef. Julian, Diego, and Marcus arrived with Daniel Patterson, a silver-haired man in his 60s who radiated expensive legal expertise. They wouldn't make eye contact with me. My mother and father sat in the gallery behind them, my mother dabbing her eyes with a tissue like this was a funeral instead of a hearing about their children trying to rob me. Judge Catherine Morrison presided. She was in her 50s, known for being no-nonsense and efficient. She reviewed the filings quickly, then looked up at both parties. This appears straightforward, she said. Ms. Santos alleges that the minority owners violated the operating agreement by negotiating with a potential buyer without majority owner consent, thereby triggering a buyout provision. The minority owners dispute this characterization. Mr. Patterson? Daniel Patterson stood, and his voice had that smooth, practiced quality of someone who'd won arguments for 4 decades. Your Honor, my clients believe there's been a fundamental misunderstanding. They had preliminary discussions with Maxwell Hospitality Group, yes, but these were exploratory only. No binding agreement was reached. No sale was negotiated. They were simply gathering information about market value, which is well within their rights as stakeholders. Ms. Santos has overreacted to what amounts to prudent business inquiry, and she's using a technicality to strip my clients of their legitimate investment. Ms. Russo? Judge Morrison turned to Simone. Simone stood, and she didn't need smooth delivery. She had facts. Your Honor, I'd like to submit Exhibit A, an email from Maxwell Hospitality Group to Ms. Santos, sent the evening of her restaurant's grand opening. This email explicitly states that Maxwell met with the minority owners to review financials and discuss terms. Not to gather general information. To discuss specific terms of acquisition. Furthermore, Exhibit B shows that the minority owners provided Maxwell with proprietary financial documents, operational data, and recipe information without Ms. Santos's knowledge or consent. This isn't a misunderstanding. This is a deliberate attempt to sell the company without majority owner approval, which Section 7.3 of the operating agreement explicitly prohibits and designates as grounds for buyout at book value. She handed copies to the judge and opposing counsel. I watched Patterson's expression shift slightly as he read the email. He hadn't seen it before. His clients had lied to him about the nature of their meetings with Maxwell. Judge Morrison read silently for several minutes. Then she looked at Julian, Diego, and Marcus. Did you provide Maxwell Hospitality with company financials and operational data? Patterson started to respond, but the judge held up a hand. I'm asking your clients directly, Counselor. Julian shifted uncomfortably. Yes. We provided them with information. But we were just exploring options. We weren't committing to anything. Did you have Ms. Santos's permission to share this proprietary information with a potential buyer? Silence. Then Diego said quietly, No, Your Honor. Did you inform Ms. Santos that you were meeting with Maxwell Hospitality? We thought, Marcus started. Yes or no, Mr. Whitfield? No. Judge Morrison looked back at the operating agreement, reading Section 7.3 carefully. Then she looked at Patterson. Counselor, your clients violated the agreement. The language is unambiguous. Any attempt by minority owners to negotiate, discuss, or facilitate the sale or transfer of company assets or ownership without explicit majority owner approval shall constitute grounds for immediate buyout at book value. They discussed sale terms. They facilitated buyer access to proprietary information. They did so without Ms. Santos's approval. The buyout clause is triggered. Your Honor, if I may, Patterson tried. You may not. The injunction is granted. No shares of Santos Hospitality LLC may be sold, transferred, or encumbered pending completion of the buyout. Ms. Santos has 30 days to arrange financing for the $200,000 buyout. Minority owners are ordered to cooperate with the transfer process. This hearing is concluded. The gavel came down. Just like that. 30 seconds of judgment that ended my family's ownership stake in my restaurant. I watched the reality hit them in stages. Julian's face went from confident to confused to angry. Diego looked like he might be sick. Marcus just stared at the table. The room erupted. Applause, cheers, Marcus actually tearing up. Aria grabbed me in a hug so tight I couldn't breathe. "We've been waiting for you to do this," she whispered. "We've been watching you carry them for months, watching them question every decision you made, and we've been waiting for you to cut them loose. Well, they're loose. Now let's build something extraordinary." The next 3 weeks were a blur. We redesigned the tasting menu. I reached out to every food writer, critic, and influencer in the Southeast. I called in favors from chef friends I'd worked with over the years. I contacted the James Beard Foundation about doing a guest chef series. I pitched Sorella as a destination for culinary innovation, a place where Southern ingredients met global techniques without pretension or gimmicks. The response was overwhelming. Food and Wine wanted to do a feature. The New York Times food section reached out. Bon Appetit asked about photographing the restaurant for their Best New Restaurants list. Every food media outlet that had ignored us during the first opening suddenly wanted access. And I gave it to them. Because this time, I wasn't trying to impress my family. I was building something for myself, for my team, for the culinary community that had always supported me. This time, it mattered. I didn't invite Julian, Diego, Marcus, my parents, or Gabriella to the relaunch. I didn't send announcements. I didn't mention it to them at all. Because they'd made it clear that my success wasn't something they wanted to celebrate. It was something they wanted to exploit. And I was done giving them opportunities to do either. December 10th arrived. I got to the restaurant at 6 a.m., even though we didn't open until 7 p.m. I walked through every station, checked every detail, tasted every component of every dish. Marcus and the team arrived at 9, and we ran through service scenarios, timing, plating standards. Aria briefed the front-of-house staff on the guest list, seating arrangements, wine pairings. By 5 p.m., we were ready. By 6 p.m., guests were arriving. And this time, the restaurant filled. Every seat. Food critics, local chefs, sommeliers, farmers I'd partnered with, purveyors, industry friends, food media. People who understood what Sorella represented. People who cared about food, about craft, about the art of hospitality. At 7:15 p.m., I stepped out of the kitchen to welcome everyone. The dining room was alive with conversation, laughter, the clink of wine glasses. This was what I'd envisioned. This energy. This joy. People gathering around good food, experiencing something special, creating memories. I raised my voice just slightly. Thank you all for being here tonight. For those who don't know me, I'm Isabella Santos, chef and owner of Sorella. This restaurant represents 15 years of learning, training, failing, growing, and dreaming. It represents every kitchen I've worked in, every chef who taught me, every farmer who trusted me with their harvest, every guest who's ever left a table satisfied. And it represents the belief that food isn't just fuel. It's culture, memory, love, art. Tonight, we're serving 7 courses that showcase what's possible when you respect ingredients, honor traditions, and aren't afraid to take risks. Thank you for trusting us with your evening. Let's make it unforgettable. The applause was genuine. Warm. And I felt something I hadn't felt on the first opening night, belonging. These were my people. This was my community. And I'd built this without the family that had tried to tear it down. Service was flawless. Every course timed perfectly, every plate a work of art, every flavor combination landing exactly as intended. I watched from the kitchen as guests reacted to the food. The surprise delight at the first bite of our scallop crudo with yuzu and crispy rice. The satisfied sighs over the braised short rib with fermented pepper and creamy grits. The reverent silence that followed the final dessert, a reinterpretation of pecan pie with brown butter ice cream and bourbon caramel. By 10 p.m., the last guests were lingering over digestives. The critics were taking notes. The food media were photographing empty plates. And I was exhausted, exhilarated, and completely, totally vindicated. Carolina Hunt from Charleston Magazine found me in the kitchen around 10:30 p.m. Isabella, that was extraordinary. Genuinely, one of the best meals I've had this year. I want to do a feature. Not just about the food, but about you. The journey. How you built this. I'd love that, I said. But I have one condition. No family drama. This story isn't about them. It's about Sorella, about the team, about the food. Can you focus on that? Absolutely. This is about your success, not their failure. When can we start? We scheduled the interview for the following week. Over the next month, Sorella became exactly what I'd dreamed it could be. Reservations booked solid 6 weeks out. Critics raved. The Times piece called it the most exciting new restaurant in the South. Bon Appetit included us in their Best New Restaurants 2024 list. Food and Wine photographed our signature dishes for their Genius Recipes feature. And the James Beard Foundation invited me to cook at the Beard House in New York. The invitation arrived via email on a Tuesday morning in January. Dear Chef Santos, we would be honored to host you for a dinner at the James Beard House. Your innovative approach to Southern cuisine and your commitment to local sourcing aligns perfectly with our mission. Please let us know your availability. I read it 3 times. The Beard House. Every chef's dream. A stamp of validation from the culinary institution that mattered most. I was 33 years old, and I'd just been invited to cook at the James Beard House. I called my mentor, Chef Marie Toussaint, who I'd worked under in New York a decade ago. She answered immediately. Isabella. I heard about Sorella. Congratulations, Sherry. You did it. Marie, I got invited to the Beard House. There was a pause. Then she started laughing, that joyful, proud laugh I'd heard countless times when I'd nailed a dish or mastered a technique. Of course you did. Of course. Isabella, this is everything. Do you understand? This is the moment that defines your career. I'm terrified. Good. Terror means you care. Terror means you'll prepare like your life depends on it. And you'll walk into that kitchen and show them exactly who you are. The girl who wasn't supposed to succeed. The dreamer who built an empire. The chef who turned betrayal into brilliance. You're going to cook the dinner of your life, and everyone who doubted you will have to watch you win. She was right. I spent 4 weeks planning the menu for the Beard House. 7 courses showcasing low-country ingredients and global techniques. I practiced every dish until I could execute it perfectly under pressure. I coordinated with purveyors to ship ingredients to New York. I briefed my team, Marcus and Aria were coming with me, on timing, plating, service flow. The dinner was scheduled for February 20th, 90 seats. Tickets sold out in 48 hours at $275 per person. The guest list included food critics, chef colleagues, industry leaders, and food media from across the country. It was the kind of audience that could make or break a career. 3 days before I left for New York, my mother called. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Isabella. Her voice was soft, tentative. I heard about the James Beard House. Congratulations. Thank you. I wanted to apologize. For not showing up. For the opening, and before that, for all the times I should have supported you and didn't. Your father and I, we didn't understand what you were building. We thought you were being impractical, chasing something impossible. But you did it. You built something extraordinary. And I'm sorry I couldn't see it sooner. A month later, I got an email from the James Beard Foundation. Subject line, semi-finalist notification, Best Chef, Southeast. I'd been nominated for a James Beard Award. At 33, after 15 years of being told I was wasting my potential, after a lifetime of being dismissed as impractical and naive, after my own family had tried to steal my restaurant, I was a semi-finalist for the most prestigious culinary award in America. I didn't tell my family. Didn't announce it on social media. Just sent a group text to Marcus, Aria, and my tight circle of chef friends. We're semi-finalists. Beard Award. Best Chef Southeast. The responses came immediately. Celebrations. Champagne emojis. Video calls with people screaming congratulations. Marie sent a voice message that was just her laughing and crying and saying, "I told you. I told you. This is your moment, Sherry. Take it." And I did. Not because I needed to prove something to my family anymore, but because I'd proven it to myself. That the dreams they'd called impossible were inevitable. That the career they'd dismissed was extraordinary. That the daughter they'd underestimated was unstoppable. 6 months after the disastrous first opening, Sorella was thriving. We'd been featured in every major food publication. We were booked out 2 months in advance. We'd expanded the team, refined the menu, and became the restaurant I'd always envisioned. And I'd done it without my family's money, without their approval, without their support. I'd done it despite them. And in doing so, I'd discovered something more valuable than their acceptance, my own power. The power that comes from knowing your worth, protecting your dreams, and refusing to let anyone, not even family, diminish who you are. My name is Isabella Santos. My family missed my opening, tried to steal my restaurant, and underestimated me for 33 years. And in response, I built an empire they'll never touch, earned recognition they'll never diminish, and created a legacy that has nothing to do with their approval and everything to do with my refusal to accept anything less than I deserved. They thought they were stealing my dream. Instead, they freed me to build something greater than they could ever imagine. And that freedom? That was worth every moment of betrayal it took to claim it.